Oh, I better put the Pepsi back in the fridge. Oh,
Yeah.
Carl, you're doing advertising now. No, I'm just drinking Pepsi, man. Fuck you.
Just get those Cocoa Shreddies in there.
No, Cocoa Shredder can stay on screen. Cocoa Shredder fucking baller.
They're not on there.
Right,
you can
ready?
just see like the top of the tab.
So, Lucas, any favourite Bruce Lee moments?
Don't ask me that, Carl.
Oh, okay. Not watching any Bruce Lee films?
Not in a long time.
And you picked this article?
You did, really.
Oh, right. Gotta be a fun one then. So, Lucas, any favourite martial arts movies? Need a minute?
Yeah, I do.
Do you want to bring Nisha? Well, apparently no one's had any coffee today, so no one feels very good.
Right, give us a minute.
Okay. So, Lucas, any favourite martial arts movies?
Maybe Who Am I?
I like that one too. Put a clip in. Perfect. So then we can put in the clip, and it's the guy wearing the tie, and Jackie Chan grabs his tie.
Oh, yeah.
If there's one thing everybody knows about Bruce Lee, it's that he was pretty good at martial arts. A fact that you'd assume would make him a shoo-in for any role that required you to have the ability to punch a man's head off. As it turns out, that wasn't exactly the case around the time Bruce Lee was active in Hollywood, because he once lost out on a role of a martial artist in a TV show to a guy who only had experience dancing.
So what on earth is this show, Carl?
Well, this is a show from the 70s called Kung Fu, starring one David Carradine, who is an actor, I think, who is now famous for, appearing in lots of martial arts films and TV shows, despite the fact, as we're about to discuss, he had no real martial arts experience whatsoever. And before we move on to, the premise of the show itself, do you have any personal favourite David Carradine roles? Because he had a lot of them.
I mean, I've only just heard of the name David Carradine.
Well, he's in Kill Bill. He's Bill.
Oh,
yeah, it's that
well,
guy.
that then.
It's that guy.
That then.
I'm gonna say, how do you not know who David Carradine is? He was in so many films. He's just that guy.
I think it's more just I don't recognise the name.
But you recognise the face.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You recognise, that guy. So mine is Future Force, because it's from, the low point of his career, where he would start in any old shit. It is one of those films where you can tell 100% he was drunk on set.
Oh,
because there is a scene where he's required to drive a car, but he doesn't drive the car. He gets into the passenger seat and his co-star drives the car for him because he just can't walk. It's like, oh, David. Do you want to know a fun fact about David Carradine?
Yes, please.
He's now the late David Carradine, and do you know how he unfortunately passed away?
No.
Jerking himself off while choking it. He jerked himself to death. It's it shouldn't be funny, but the fact that that's how he died.
I was not ready.
This
is too early in the day for that, Carl.
It's too early in the day, but it's one of those things, because if I don't mention it, the comments will. Because I think it's the only thing people know about. It's that he was in Kill Bill, he was in Kung Fu, and that he died jerking it.
Oh my God. It's one way to go.
To be fair, that's how I want to go. It's like that Sean Locke joke, innit? It's like, Sean, how would you want to go if you're going to die muffled by flesh?
So, Carl, please educate me on this Kung Fu TV show.
Well, in the show, David Carradine plays a character called Kwai Chang Caine. And you are overly familiar with David Carradine, but you remember what he looks like, don't you?
Well, he certainly doesn't look like a character called that.
Kwai Chang Caine, a character who is, according to the show, half Chinese and half American. But David Carradine does not look half fucking Chinese. So you're not familiar with the show, but you now have in your head the character Kwai Chang Caine, correct?
Yeah.
And you have David Carradine in your head, and it's like, well, it's just an old white dude. How do he play a Chinese character? And the answer is, Lucas, he would just squint ever so slightly in all of his publicity photos.
Oh, no.
It's like, close enough, I guess. It's close enough. Oh, is that okay? And it makes me uncomfortable to see that, but I'm not sure how uncomfortable it should make me to see this white guy just going, yeah, I'm playing a Chinese guy. It's up there in terms of just being offensive, but it's nowhere near Mickey Rooney as Mr. Yonoshi.
Oh no, it's not up there.
A clip of which will be in now. I think there's a contemporary review from when that film came out, and it describes that Mr. Yonoshi character, this fucking guy, it's a colourful caricature of a Japanese man.
Oh, God.
It's so fucking offensive. It's
so bad.
It's every stereotype at once. Anyway, let's talk more about Kwai Chang Caine, the mysteriously white Chinese man.
So tell me more about Kwai Chang Caine.
Yeah, because you probably guessed, the show is called Kung Fu.
Yep.
So, in the context of the show, Kwai Chang Caine is a Shaolin Kung Fu master who uses his Kung Fu to beat up bad guys and save the day. The problem is when David Carradine was cast as Kwai Chang, master of all Kung Fu, he didn't know any martial arts whatsoever.
Perfect for the role.
Yeah, I should point out that he did eventually learn martial arts, partly because he became interested in them thanks to the show. Because he was in the show talking about, philosophizing about martial arts and what they mean. It's like, Chinese culture as a white dude with a bald head. And he thought to himself, well, maybe I should research martial arts. They sound pretty cool. And he did eventually learn a couple of Chinese martial arts things like Tai Chi and Qigong. I hope I'm pronouncing those correctly.
Probably not, but yeah, sure.
But when he appeared on the show as this supposed Shaolin Kung Fu master, he had no experience whatsoever in martial arts, but he did have experience as a dancer, which is apparently good enough.
So surely if he's just dancing instead of doing martial arts, people would fucking recognise that?
Yeah, well, the show happened to air in the 70s before martial arts became a big thing in cinema. This is around the time Bruce Lee was starting to get famous. So people were aware of what martial arts were, but they weren't aware of what good martial arts are.
Right, okay.
Joe, today you can watch a martial arts movie and tell if it's shit immediately.
Yeah.
Based on the editing and the choreography and all that. People back then, they just thought, it's this kind of cool thing. So they managed to hide David Carradine's lack of any experience with martial arts with stunt doubles and clever editing and the fight choreographer, one Danny Chow, who actually knew what martial arts was. And it's noted that he would use his experience to make up for David Carradine's total lack of it. But as I said, though, David Carradine actually did learn some martial arts. I think by the third season, he didn't have stunt doubles anymore. But it doesn't change the fact for the first season. In a show called Kung Fu, they got a white guy who couldn't do any martial arts to play the titular Kung Fu master. And that just sums up Hollywood, doesn't it? And what makes this all just a little bit more hilarious is, you probably guessed from the title, Luke, is that David Carradine wasn't the person who they wanted to play the role originally.
Yeah,
it wasn't David Carradine, no, it was one Bruce Lee. Not only did Bruce Lee know martial arts, he invented his own. It's like Jeet Kune Do, which I think just means way of the intercepting fist.
That's pretty fucking cool,
It's a martial art he invented, which he said, it minimises all unnecessary movement and focuses on how to obliterate your opponent in the quickest, most efficient manner possible.
But let's not get him for a Kung Fu role.
Man. I think one of my favourite quotes about David Carradine is from another famous martial artist like Chuck Norris, who said of David Carradine's martial arts skills, he's about as good at martial arts as I am at acting. it's just, that's perfect, isn't it? It's just...
Considering Chuck Norris's best acting roles are ones where he just doesn't act.
Yeah, he just beats up... Like one where he gets beaten up by Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Do you know Chuck Norris also invented his own martial art?
What?
Do you know what it's called? Chuck Kwando. It's just Chuck Norris's own martial art. I'm not making that up.
Oh, God.
So, in that vein, let's talk about now, good fight scenes or good martial arts. You said Jackie Chan movies are, personal favourite.
Personally, yeah.
Yeah, and you said you like the fight scene from Who Am I, correct?
Yeah.
Favourite part of it, I'm guessing there's two fight scenes in that movie that everyone always talks about.
Oh, the bit with the tie?
The bit with the tie, the fight on the rooftop against the really tall guy and the really short guy. I like that one, but I'm going to give big props to a movie I don't think a lot of people watch. I'm going to say Michael Jai White. I've really gotten into Michael Jai White because there's a movie that I guess a lot of people have seen, but it's available for free in HD on YouTube. I'm not sure how much longer it's going to stay up after I talk about it. It's called Blood and Bone. And you're thinking, Carl, what is Blood and Bone about? Well, I'll tell you, Lucas. Blood and Bone is about a big, giant black man called Bone.
What? He's called Bone?
He's called Bone. And he even comes into what should I call you, sir? It's like, Bone. And Michael Jai White is just the biggest, blackest man you've ever seen. And he's super angry. And in the opening scene of the movie, he beats up Kimbo Slice. So we established this guy, this is the blackest martial arts movie you've ever fucking seen.
Oh my God.
And he does all of his martial arts just wearing big digger boots. But he does Tai Chi. So you've got this giant, shirtless, rippling black man doing Tai Chi in Tim's. It's it's so cool. The reason I want to talk about this movie is because the character Michael Jai White plays, the eponymous Bone, never once is challenged by any opponent he fights.
Oh.
He wins every fight in one punch or one kick.
Oh my God, he's One Punch Man.
by using his super martial arts powers to see the weakness in the opponent's defense. There's a bit in it where he sees a guy throwing side kicks, so he stands like that, and the guy throws a side kick and just punches out one. But at the end of the movie, he fights what the story establishes as the greatest underground martial artist in the world who's killed 4 men in the ring. And he beats him without trying. And as he's about to get him to tap out, he taps on the floor himself to quit, to fuck over the big bad.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, fight for me. I paid $5 million to arrange this fight. So he beats the guy and then taps out for the insult. And then the guy comes in with a sword. And you're thinking, Karl, why are you mentioning it? It's because throughout the movie, Bone has only fought with his bare hands. And he says, I don't use weapons.
Okay.
So when this guy comes in with a sword, someone throws a sword to him, he pulls a sword out, does a 40-hit combo on the air, throws a sword to the side and beats him up with the sheath. And just hits him with it on the head. That's all he does. It's so good. It's on YouTube for free. Go watch it now. Instead of this video, it's so awesome.
Oh,
I
God.
love it. It's just the first scene where he comes in and goes, I want you to send a message to everyone in prison, because he's in prison. And asks, what is it? He goes, if anyone in this prison gets the urge to fuck with me, don't. I don't know why he's not in more movies. Honestly, that delivery is amazing. He's a great actor. Almost as good as Chuck Norris.
So surely Bruce Lee would have just been the perfect casting in this show?
He would have been, yeah, because the whole point of the show is that it's a martial arts master who beats the shit out of people, for truth and justice. And
That sounds like Bruce Lee.
Also, it's supposed to be an Asian guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like Bruce Lee. And we don't know for sure why the show never got made, because it does sound like the perfect role for Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. Especially when you consider that when Bruce Lee was alive, he actually wrote a TV show, which I think got released in 2019 called Warrior. You may have seen it on Netflix, which is a show he wrote and pitched to various studios about a guy who travels the Old West, fighting people using martial arts to solve problems and help save the day.
Yeah.
The show Kung Fu is about a guy who wanders around the Wild West, fighting people and using martial arts to save the day. So we're not saying that someone stole Bruce Lee's idea, but Bruce Lee's widow did say that. So I don't know who you're going to believe. And the rumor goes that Bruce Lee was passed over for the role because TV executives didn't think that an Asian man could be the lead of a TV show.
Even though it's meant to be an Asian lead of the TV
and the
show.
character's called Kwai Chang. Also, I'd like to point out that around the time Bruce Lee was in The Green Hornet, and he played Kato, who's supposedly the side character, but his character was so popular, as we've talked about on the channel before, in Asian markets, they pitched it as the Kato show, starring the Green Hornet. And Bruce Lee was the main character to people because he was the most competent fighter.
Yeah.
But TV executives thought, no, this super famous, awesome martial artist can't carry this TV show.
But Karl, how great was the reboot of Green Hornet?
He was all right.
It was fine.
He was fine. I do like the bit at the end, though, where they just come up and just shoot Seth Rogen. I love that bit. I love that hustle of, this is what you get for messing with the Green Hornet's business, and they just shoot Seth Rogen with a paintball gun. The Green Hornet can't fight, and they allude to that fact in the movie, Seth Rogen can't fight. He goes, why do I get a gun and you bunch people? And he goes, well, it could be your stinger. It's your stinger, isn't it? It's like, oh man, you do everything, I do nothing.
Yeah, basically.
I've got all the money. I'm just like a fat white dude who punches people once.
It's Seth Rogen.
I love that movie.
So surely we have David Carradine's side of the story?
We do, yes, because this is obviously, it's a long-standing TV rumour that Bruce Lee was passed over for the role because he's an Asian guy. Obviously, it was Hollywood whitewashing, that they didn't want an Asian lead in a TV show. Someone asked David Carradine about it, because he was well, you got the role ahead of him, you didn't know any martial arts, you're not Asian, the character is Asian and knows martial arts, the fuck's going on? And David Carradine said, and I shit you not, I got the role over Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee, he was a good martial artist, but he was also a comedian. Where people at the time only knew him for, comedic roles. Some of his movies, they had the comedic slant.
A little bit, yeah.
Like the one in Big Boss where he kicks 2 people in the nuts and then takes a big bite of an egg roll or something. And what the TV studios were looking for the character was someone who exuded, and I quote, an aura of quiet, brooding power. And Bruce Lee didn't have that. And I'd like to counter that statement with just this image of Bruce Lee with his shirt off and say, does that man not exude an aura of quiet, brooding power?
That's all he emits.
one of the most iconic Bruce Lee moments is just that one of him stood when he's like 4 foot fucking wide at the top of a flight of stairs and everyone shits their pants.
Oh my God.
And the best bit is that same interview where David Carradine drops that quote. He talks about the fact that people start fights with him all the time in bars. But don't worry, he uses his extensive martial arts knowledge to flip them over and embarrass them. It's like, David, you didn't know any martial arts.
No.
But until 10 years after the show. It's like, oh, it's so fucking bad. And yeah, I'd just like to leave everyone with that statement that David Carradine, this man, thought that he exuded a more threatening aura than this one. Which I believe.
I'm not sure I do.
Should we put the blood and bone bit to the end?
Yeah, can do.
We'll do a little introduction around it then.
Okay.
So earlier in the video, Lucas, you mentioned that you like Jackie Chan movies, right?
Oh yeah, I do, yeah.
And I think a lot of our audience are probably already aware of Jackie Chan movies.
I hope so.
I'm going to talk about a movie I don't think a lot of them watch, and a martial artist I don't think gets a lot of play or credit.
Okay.
Except for people like me who just love really bad action movies and watch them. And I want to talk about the film Blood and Bone. Perfect. And then we can just... Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like an entire 3-minute conversation that was kind of...
Yeah. Fair enough.
It's just really fun.
Saves yeah.
Wow, can you tell we're all a bit out of it today?
Yeah, you could tell you were.
Yeah,
All right.
I fucking know, Carl.
I was talking about Blood and Bone. I'm fine.